United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do the roll call.
Here.
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 Here. We have several recognitions. And would you like to get up
Yes.
there and help hand out?
Mr. Walsh will read the names. Ms. Matana and Ms. Towner will.
Sorry.
Students, when you hear your name, please come forward and then stay up until we finish that section. So when we finish the math team, then all the math students can, the parents need to take a picture, then we can, and we all sit down or come up at the same time, or go sit down at the same time, I'm sorry.
The math team competed in the Metro Suburban Conference Math Competition on Saturday, December 2nd, 2017 at Ileana Christian High School. Congratulations to the following students. Algebra 1, 8th place, Jack Jameson.
Congratulations, Jack. Thank you.
Algebra 1, 3rd place, Celeste Izaguirre. Algebra 1 team, 3rd place, Peter Gianettos. Celeste Izaguirre, Jack Jameson, Cassidy Krupski, Ryan Lotch, and Isabel Linares.
Brian Lott.
Now we move on to geometry. 8th place, Daniel Kowicki. Geometry 5th place, Grace DiBartolomeo and Claire Kowicki. 4th place, William O'Brien. 2nd place, Joshua Turner.
Good to see you again.
And for the geometry team, they got 1st place, and the members were Jade Connor, Grace DiBartolomeo, Jacqueline DeMonte, Taylor Jurgens, Claire Kowicki, Daniel Kowicki, William O'Brien, Kathy Pribble-Pierdenach, and Joshua, oh, here she's,
Yeah.
Kathy, and Joshua Turner.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Now we move on to Algebra 2. 9th place, Elise Wojak and Joseph Kowicki. Algebra 2, 5th place, Luka Melovic. And the Algebra 2 team came in 3rd place, and the members were Joseph Kowicki, Luka Melovic, Andres Resto, Joseph Vitek, and Elise Wojak. For pre-calculus, 5th place, Jason Kenny. For calculator, the team came in 3rd place, and the members were Peter Gianettos, Taylor Jurgens, Joseph Kowicki, Jackson Hager, and Jason Kenny. For the freshman-sophomore math team, they came in 2nd place, and the team members were Celeste Izaguirre, Jack Jameson, Ryan Lotch, Isabella Lanera, Grace DiBartolomeo, Jacqueline DeMonte, William O'Brien, and Joshua Turner. And finally, the math team, overall team came in 2nd place. They saved me reading, I guess. It says all the students previously listed, plus Caitlin Gaynor,
Okay, clear.
Mary Claire Greenlees, Claire Jacobs, Haley Jurgens, and Jacob Warzala.
Is this a math team competitor coming in?
Josh.
Okay, who's this?
What's your name?
Turner.
Oh, he's mentioned a couple of times. Good job, Josh. Let's hear it for Josh. Josh, you took second place in geometry?
Yep.
Good job, Josh. We expect big things from you next year on the SAT now.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Well, let's give another round.
Let's round of applause.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you, math team. You have a seat now.
And now we're going to go to the speech team. The following students receive awards in the Cary Grove Speech Tournament, which was held in December. For radio, first place, Jonathan Wells. For humorous interpretation, first place, Cameron Winkler.
Congratulations. Thank you.
For original comedy, second place, Tanner Uzelder. I'm sorry.
Tanner, how do you say your name? Gazelda.
Sorry, I should have asked you that one, Kristen.
Good job, Tanner.
Good to see you again, Tanner.
Can you say something funny for us? And for dramatic duet acting, second place, Noah Morris and Casey Whistler. Let's give another round of applause for the speech team.
That's it.
That's it, recognitions? All right.
Student association report.
Do you want to tell people they can leave? Here?
Usually parents, after the student association report is when you kind of make your way to the door, unless you want to stay for our eventful meeting, you're more than welcome. But we usually, after the students speak, people can.
This year we had a very successful coat and blanket drive. We collected coats, hats, gloves, scarves, and blankets, and we collected over 520 items and delivered them to church in Oakbrook. Yeah, Christ Church in Oakbrook, and it was very successful.
Especially since, would you mind saying your names and your
Oh,
offices
positions?
again? So
Oh, okay.
everybody knows.
I'm Alana Wise. I'm student spokesperson.
Max Alvarez, Vice President.
Caitlin Gaynor, President.
Paulina Lenore, Secretary.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're missing two others.
And then, yeah, Claire and Jane are with us tonight.
Yeah. So yeah, coat and blanket drive.
Coat and blanket drive, what else is going on?
We also had San Anonymous, where we work with CSS in Brookfield, providing gifts to people who necessarily couldn't get gifts. And we were able to help 20 people. And also San Anonymous, we raised like the 20 gifts, and we also raised $200 with that also. And the $200 we're kind of using for a whole bunch of different like fundraisers and things in the community throughout the year.
Yeah, so we used some of the extra money we had from San Anonymous for when we went and visited the Ronald McDonald House. We went after the second day of finals. We had about like 25 students come with. We were there from like 1 to 3. We baked cookies, and then we also cleaned the entire house. And then with the extra money we had from San Anonymous, we bought a bunch of items off their wish list to bring with. So like random like granola bars or like other food, and then like cleaning supplies for them.
Very nice.
And then we also helped out with the PTO for on Martin Luther King Day, the day we had off. They helped collect. They made kits for the homeless, and we helped make those kits, and it was really successful. So they had over 100 kits made, so it was awesome to be a part of that.
This Thursday is Custodian Appreciation Day, and we made a banner, and we have it in the lunchroom, and everyone comes up and signs it. And we have a lunch and a dinner for the night and daytime staff. And then our next blood drive is February 28th.
Yep.
What other events do you have planned for the spring semester?
We have our Pop Top collection for Ronald McDonald House, and then we're looking to probably most likely help with Feed My Community Day, where they like pack food at the North Riverside Rec Center,
Okay.
and just like other spirit days and that kind of stuff.
Great, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Now's a good time, parents, if you want to act.
Thank you.
See you, Dan.
Landmark was nice, they actually talked about the Martin Luther King. Yeah, in today's paper.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good job, everybody. Anybody wants to hear the tardy report?
Next is President's report. There's nothing to report. Let's go to Superintendent's report.
Superintendent's report, Curriculum Advisory Council, no update. However, we'll have textbooks coming in February, so I'll either do a Curriculum Council advisory meeting or a conference call just to review the textbooks that we'll be bringing forward to the board. But since we have our 4-year plan that we've been showing the board regularly, there's nothing new on there. Facilities Advisory Council met this past week to review construction costs, both from the first 3 years of construction projects, and then we laid out a timeline for future projects. We'll report to the whole board in February. Finance Advisory Council met last month to review the projections that the board's going to see tonight. Personnel Advisory Council, no update. Policy Advisory Council met 2 weeks ago, and we'll discuss the few changes that were presented in the policy packet later this evening.
Okay. Next is Principal's report.
On Saturday, we will have over 400 8th grade students coming to RB to register for their classes next year. Last week, the same students came with their parents to Future Bulldog Night to learn about course placements as well as extracurricular opportunities. We had a great turnout. The gym was full. Usually that event brings either multiple parents and siblings, but the gym was packed. So it was a great turnout, and we're excited for those students to start RB next year. Semester 1 grades have been finalized and are posted to Skyward. Report cards have also been mailed out. For those students who may have failed a course that's a graduation requirement, we expect to see them in summer school, and we'll be mailing out a letter regarding this shortly. We're also currently working on the summer school brochure, and we'll share it out with the board before finalizing it in March. This quarter, we also plan on moving to online report cards for the first and third quarters. So just reporting out on the quarter, it's a semester grade that stays on the transcript. We still plan on sending those home. So now that report cards have gone out, we'll start communicating about online report cards for third quarter. We didn't want to do it earlier to confuse parents, so we'll start sending that out and how they can view that information on Skyward. Local scholarship applications for seniors will be available on the Student Services website on February 2nd, and that application is due March 9th. So you can access the applications under the Student Services website, but it's a great opportunity for parents that have seniors to encourage them to go on. Sometimes we have scholarships where we don't have a lot of students that are qualified to apply, so it's a great resource that you should look into if you have a senior student. This past weekend was very successful in regards to extracurriculars. Our Bulldog chess team won the Metro Suburban Conference Tournament. And this year, the IHSA, has implemented a sectional competition before state, so they'll compete at that this weekend at Hinsdale Central. In addition to that, though, our girls' Palms team qualified for state, and they'll be leaving Thursday. The competition is this weekend in Bloomington, and Special Olympics basketball qualified for their state competition in March. And then I know wrestling also took second in their MSC conference tournament this weekend. So it was this exciting weekend across the board for RB. Also have a couple of reports. First, I wanted to follow up regarding Dr. Keene's request for gift cards. The amount we spend on gift cards varies from year to year, but is typically under $1,000. So last year we spent $450 on purchasing $95 gift cards that we give out to students under our HERO system, our positive behavior system, which you'll hear Dave and Neil talk about in a minute. So those purchases are recorded through our activity account, and then how we distribute them is purchased through our HERO system. We can track every month how many are given out, but we can also track in particular which students receive those as well. So you can see that last year we purchased $450 worth and we distributed all of those. In addition to students, we do purchase some gift cards for adults as well. Marianne purchases them for Perfect Attendance Awards and 25 Years of Service Awards. And she keeps a list every year of the staff that receive those, and those are purchased through a board account. The only other purchases made for gift cards are for guest speakers. And when we submit a check request, we put the name of the guest speaker that the gift card is going to. Are there any questions on that before I move on?
It's a lot less than what you run us compared to CPS.
We've got the internal controls here.
Next, under the principal's report is the professional development summary. It's on board book, page 7. This is an annual report that we typically give in January and June. It began about 4 years ago. It's to clarify about how much money we were being spent to assist the teachers in improving their instruction. So this year, there are 4 categories. The first is Title I, which is a federal grant that allows us to spend that money on at-risk professional development. So professional development that helps support the academic achievement of our at-risk students. It's based solely on the number of free and reduced lunch students that we have. Title II is our general professional development account. It's also a federal grant, and that's geared towards improving student achievement. That amount you'll see is a little higher than what we typically see because we had some rollover money from last year. Teachers said that they were going to go to conferences and then they had conflicts arise and they didn't go, and so that money does roll over. Title IV is a new grant this year. It's a federal grant established under ESSA, which is Every Student Succeeds Act. That replaced the No Child Left Behind Act, if you're familiar with that. It has several purposes. One of them is it allows for the professional development of technology. So we utilized a portion of that grant to pay for some professional development for technology. And then lastly, the unclaimed tuition is something that's in our collective bargaining agreement, and you can see that we have a projection for that. So if you look at the actual report, you can see under Title I, we have not spent a lot of that money yet. And you can see that we have spent $1,735 of the money that we had allocated. And so we have about $15,000 left to spend in that account. In Title II, we categorize requests under 4 categories: technology, Common Core Standards or SAT, AP conferences, and school and department goals. And so we had a little over $40,000 of Title II money available, and we've already spent a little over $12,000. One thing to note with this is that AP conferences typically occur in the summer. So second semester, you'll really see that section of the report grow because that's when the information comes out and the requests come in for that. Title IV, we allocated $500 for professional development for technology, and we have allocated that already. And then unclaimed tuition reimbursement requests, that's primarily used for summer curriculum time, where teachers work on curriculum projects that we approve. And that we get the exact amount in March after all the tuition reimbursement requests have been approved. And so that's when that process starts. So that's why it's marked as 0 at this time. Are there any questions on this report?
I had a question. So on page 8, section D, the first one is Rick Wormelli, SBR. Are we exploring SBR? Are we?
We're exploring our current grading practices in the building.
I'm sorry.
Standards-based grading.
Standards-based reporting, yeah.
So we're not necessarily exploring that in the traditional sense, but we are, as a building, looking at our current grading practices and how we can get them more consistent, and looking at how we can maybe adopt some of his practices that we believe in, but we're not going to standards-based grading.
Okay. And then, that's only one person going to ISTE?
Can you say it in English so we know what you're
ISTE,
Title
it's the
IV.
international, I'm sorry, page 9, the Title IV Technology. ISTE is the International Conference for Technology and Education. It's being held here in Chicago. So it's an international conference in our backyard where you get world-class professional development on technology and all those things related to that. And I was just wondering is that one person? I think it is.
I believe so. I believe right now just our instructional technology coordinator
Just
is the one
Bridget?
that has requested it, yeah. It doesn't mean other people won't go, but I know that
I would hope that-
she put in for it right
I would
as
hope
soon as
that
the
you would
information came
encourage
out.
more staff members, if there's money for it, to go, because it's outstanding, right? Mm-hmm. I'll be there.
I was gonna ask a question. You list all the programs we go to, but you don't say who, so it's purely like who puts their name in gets to go to the programs? I mean, if I look at one like on page 8B for Common Core, Illinois Association of English Teachers Annual Conference, would we send all the English teachers there? Or will we only send the department coach, or, you know, how do you decide?
So it's the teachers that request. So for example, the National Council of Teachers in Mathematics Annual Conference is held over 3 days, but 2 of them are more significant than the third. And so one day we sent half the department, and the other day we sent the other half of the department. So it's really driven by the conference, and it's really driven by the requests of the staff that want to attend those
Well,
conferences.
don't you help drive it? If I'm a math teacher who needs some additional help, in your opinion, do you come to me and say, I think you should go to this conference and try to get?
Yes, we do that
So
as well.
it's- So it's not just the staff members asking for it, the administrator could also go and say, we think this would be a good conference for you? Okay.
We'll recommend new teachers teaching a new AP course to go to the AP conference.
Okay.
Do those things.
All right.
Thanks, Kristen.
So the next report under the principal's report is on page 12, I believe, and that is our report on first semester attendance and student discipline. So I'd ask that Assistant Principal of Student Affairs Dave Manning come up, along with Dean of Students Neil Dugetti. I do also want to point out that based upon a request, we were able to go back in and add data from 2015-16 school year. So that's the only change that's been made to the report. But when you look at the report, you will see that additional line of data in there.
Mayor, is that on is that in the board packet?
Yep, it's in the board packet, it's not on that one.
It's not
Not on that one, but it's on the board packet.
Okay. That was just, Mr. Gritchen requested it this afternoon, so we put that in the best we could.
Where is it on the board packet?
On the new board packet.
We got a new board packet?
If you were logged in online right now, you'd see it. It's not the one that was sent
The
out
only
Friday.
difference is it has a line that says the 15-16 data. We have a few hard copies if anybody prefers.
You don't have, you know what, Kristen, I don't need to see it. Let them have it, didn't you? I just didn't.
We have extras.
Are you sure? All right.
Printed some.
I'll share. You guys want to share?
All right, well, good evening, board. Tonight, we're here to present the school culture report for the first semester. Within this report, we'll provide behavioral and attendance data from several categories. If you first want to look at the chart on top there, it's our student average daily attendance, and that goes back to 2012. And looking at 2012's percentage, we were at 93.25% at that point, and we had a steady increase to where we're at currently from last semester, and we rose to 95.12%, which is the highest recorded in some time here. So we're pretty excited about that, and it's contributed to a lot of people, our staff recording and being diligent with their attendance recording and reporting in their classrooms. The dean's really heading this off and getting in front of it through interventions with parents, conferences with students, going out and doing home visits, roping in student services, small team meetings, things like that. And so I think we're at a point now where we're really making our strides and ultimate goal is getting students into the building. And so we're really doing a good job at that. So that's where we're at for this semester. It's 95.1, and we'll continue to hopefully keep this going here second semester. The second chart is total attendance by reason and month. And if you look at that chart, several categories on the left-hand side: average excused absences, average cut, early dismissal, and there's the other category I put an asterisk by the other category. We're phasing that category out, and we're trying to streamline our data. What we saw previously was we're using the other category for fillers, such as like the Cubs rally when we had that, or for hospitalizations, and it wasn't really accurately telling us how many are excused, how many are cut. And so to kind of cut down on the amount of categories we used, we're going to put those in specific, those 3 areas, instead of just, let's put it in a blanket other category. So it gives you really accurate data going forward from those data markers. So looking at our total semester average, and these are per period, per day averages, our excused absences were at 55.2 per period per day, or overall average per period per day. And that's down a little bit from last year at 57 and up slightly from 2015-16. The cuts are up from 2.3, and this has contributed to putting some of those markers from the other category into the cut category. And Neil, do you want to describe what a cut is?
So essentially it'd be someone who just doesn't come to school. Sometimes students might come in with breakfast, or essentially it could even be where a student is considered cut. The parent hasn't gotten around to calling them in yet. So then they might call them in a day or day later, then we can correct that from being a cut to an excused absence. So that's why we've kind of, as Dave said, switched it from other to cut to now excuse, those 2 things.
Yeah, so a cut would be no valid excuse. We haven't heard from the parent into 24 hours, and that kind of would stay in that category there. So,
Question, hold on. What do you mean they came in with breakfast?
Sometimes students might come in, miss first period, and they come in with Dunkin' Donuts or breakfast, so they are Starbucks, and so they are not excused.
So they maybe cut that first period and then showed up second or third hour to school, and that's not cleared off or excused by us. The early dismissal category up slightly as well. So again, we're putting some of the other data into these other categories, and so that was up slightly to 1.9 over 1 last year.
So an early dismissal, that is typically approved?
Yeah, like if they have a sporting event.
Right.
Or, doctor's visits, yes.
Okay.
Where they would call in our attendance office, then would send a note to the classroom, and then have that student come down and be excused through that procedure.
So there was a big jump in cuts in November. What do you, is there some kind of, was there an event, something you could put that on? I mean, it's just
So like in which year, 16, 17?
17, 18 this year.
So like last year there was you mean a drop compared to last year?
So there was an increase here and sometimes it's where families don't give us a call, if they're not back yet from vacation, or
I just thought it
could
might
be
have been those 2 days before Thanksgiving or something. Or
Yeah.
It was,
So that's most likely what it is, that we didn't get a call from the family yet to clear that off, and so that's why the cut average was up in that month.
That month and in September, it looks like.
Yep. Any other questions on that area? Okay. Tardies, and it was the same procedure here, looking at August through December. Total average per period per day is at 8.5. It's cut significantly from last year's at 16. So that's a very big success from us. It's contributed to being really consistent with our HERO program. And if you look back last year, we had a lot of construction as well, first semester. So we kind of curtailed some of the tardies, knowing that we had construction out here. So I think 16 was pretty lenient, knowing that we had a lot of construction, for kids getting to school. So a lot of things kind of we've done over the summer. We had a big push to streamline our drop-off and pick-up procedure, and I think that helped get cars in quicker, so kids get into the building faster and into their classrooms sooner. And so that, I think, we see our most tardies throughout the day, first period. Students that are late, and coming from 4 different directions into one little, one area or one street to our main entrance sometimes is difficult. So not only did we streamline that, we made 2 lanes on golf here, as well as our traffic control has been consistent out there as well. So I think that's a big victory in cutting down our tardies per period there. The 10-minute tardies below is something that we were tracking previously the last couple of years, and we went from 6.6 in 2015 to 1.92 in 16-17, and then we're phasing that out. And the reason we're phasing that out, it's a data marker that if we're only seeing one per period, we're not going to track that. And how we're going to kind of go forward with that is if we see consistent students that are chronically tardy to their classes. And we can track that through here because we can see a timestamp when we give the tardy to the student. Then Neil or Dave Silver are going to call them down. They're going to put them on a hallway restriction. And when that happens, if they're late to class, we're going to security's going to escort them to class to make sure that they get there. So it's not just, hey, you're going to get called down, we'll give you a consequence for it, then we'll see you later. We're actually helping them get to class, and that's the ultimate goal, is get them in their seat, get them ready to learn for the day. So that's why we're phasing that out, because it's a data marker that we saw that it really wasn't trending upward, it was going down, and that's a great thing. And we just want to make sure that we have interventions in place through our HERO system that are accurately helping students and not just providing them consequences. So a little bit of a restorative approach there.
You had one or two questions, I think, was it on the attendance goals and initiatives, or is it on the next page?
There was one question from one of the new initiatives that we had this year. Earlier in the fall, we had students that either took public transportation, rode their bike, or walked to school, and we wanted to incentivize them a little bit, just to thank them for helping decrease the traffic congestion in the area. And so we gave away coupons, about 400 of them, and typically we're stationed outside on the various corners, and we gave students as they got off the bus or they walked or rode their bike to school a coupon, and then they redeemed that coupon for ice cream. We scooped ice cream for them during their lunchtime. So about 400 students in total received coupons for that. We're going to do that again in the spring. So that was wildly successful. Kids are happy and excited to receive those, and we want to reward kids for walking to school, and especially in the winter months here when it's real pretty cold out and they're getting here. So we want to continue to congratulate them.
Incenting kids for doing it, but how does that affect the attendance, or what did it change? I mean, did kids start riding bikes because they knew they'd get a
Traffic control at the drop off.
I understand that, but did we see an increase in people walking and riding because you're giving out incentives? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know, because we didn't do it last year.
Okay.
So we'll know when we do it in the spring versus is there an increase or decrease. Then next year we'll have a better idea.
I will say, from being in the cafeteria as they were scooping ice cream, there were kids that happened to get dropped off that morning that were disappointed, like, no, I walk every day. This is just the one day my mom drove me. And I've seen those students walking to school, so it's not, they weren't making it up, and they were disappointed that they happened to get dropped off that day and missed out on the ice cream.
I have to say, though, that, being from North Riverside, I live almost 2 miles from school. My son's never going to walk. Like,
Sure.
I wish I could get him up 45 minutes early.
We also have.
But I'm lucky he gets here on time. Well, there's a lot of parents from North Riverside who actually wish that there were some rails on the bike path because
We've talked about also
Just
rewarding
because
students
it's
for
safer.
carpooling. So if they carpool, that's another
Oh,
way
sure.
we discuss also is what
Yeah.
about those students who do carpool, and we've talked about ways to reward them as well. So we're
These
looking
are all
at that.
incentives, things we agreed upon in our settlement agreement.
Oh, no, sure. I'm just
Bike
saying
walking.
there's a small portion of kids that
We'll never
they
walk.
live,
No, yeah, I get it.
far enough away
Yep.
that even riding a bike with a heavy backpack might not be viable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell them to grow up. I ride my bike to downtown every day with a backpack on. So if I can do it, they can do it.
Suspension.
Okay, moving on to the suspension report. The suspension report that you see there, we have different
Wait, Dave,
categories.
you had, I thought you said you only had one on attendance.
On the next that page.
Yes, one question on attendance, correct.
Right, where our first dog is gonna go through tardies. Her, the suspension.
I have a question on attendance. Have you guys thought to move the bus drop-off? Because when they do with the handicap, that bus sits there for a good 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and you can flow a lot of cars through that.
We've moved it 3 times.
So this has been my project for the last couple of years here. We've had it at Door A, and then I had a bus driver literally do a 3-point turn as I have oncoming traffic coming into the door. And then we had them out on Doral and First Avenue, and then they tore up all that turf there. And so we're back to door G. And then we
Because of the
worked with
drivers?
Riverside to have a selected drop-off lane, which is good. We had to like change an ordinance for that to happen, to clear the lane there. But I think maybe what we can do is just have a discussion. Once they drop off, they need to continue to flow out. And then a further discussion on, not going and taking a right down by Hollywood, but maybe veering off and going left, because now they're trying to cut back in where all of our cars are trying to come back and drop off their students. So that's a discussion that we need to happen. So I'll
if we
make sure to
change the
make a
door
call.
because the bus driver violated the law, why don't you have a policeman write him a ticket? Maybe he won't do that the next time, or she, right?
Yeah.
It's illegal to make a 3-point turn.
Correct.
But we also tried we also tried to side by the baseball field, and we had the letters written because it was unsafe for handicap unloading on the gravel, and so we moved it back to the front. We paid extra money this year to have the front restriped, the curb to be moved. It's kind of, we're at a loss of where we can do this right now.
Yeah, there's just a lot of cars going into one spot at one time, so.
But the amount of time that they're sitting there is something we can definitely work on, because that's a valid concern. So we'll make sure we address that.
Yeah, but some of it is because they have to. I mean, they got the lift, so they got to pull, the lift's got to go down, and so you're sitting there for 25 minutes, but the flow of cars backing up behind it or trying to.
Are they not pulling into the actual spot that?
Yeah, no, they're there, and they sit there. They're there for 20, but they got to be there for like 25 minutes. They wait for the teacher to come out to.
Oh, so is the stop arm out?
No.
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes
we talked about that because they said they weren't going to put the stop arm out. But we'll address that because maybe staff needs to get out there in a little more of an expedited fashion or what have you.
We cleared larger amounts of space for them to pull in.
Like 100 feet.
Yeah, so they didn't block traffic.
Yeah, we'll look into it. Moving on to our suspension data. If you look at totals below, and then we'll break it down by categories, we're up this year. If you look at total offenses, 42, total students is 29. So we saw a couple of repeat offenders from first semester. And then our data is pretty similar to what we saw last year in several of our categories, including alcohol, 3, drug possession, 4. Our fight numbers are where our numbers are up at. And through doing a lot of investigations, through just talking and having intake sessions with parents after suspensions, what we're finding out is students are having discussions or disagreements online. And our Monday is the new Friday, basically. And that's spilling over on Monday without us even getting a chance to kind of assist or intervene there. And then that kind of blows up and then we have an altercation. So one thing we did in our recent grade level assembly is really promote, interventions, how we can support you in proper use of social media for our students. And that's going to be an ongoing discussion that we're going to have with our students. So that it doesn't come on Monday first thing, evoke into an altercation. So that's something we'll continue to work on. We just started a peer mediation program here. We trained about 12 students up. Our psychologist assisted with that in our special ed department as well. And now we have trained mediators, and if students accept and parents accept for their students to go through a peer mediation program, they now have the opportunity to discuss kind of concerns with peers of their own age, instead of an adult sitting next to them, which for some students is a little more comfortable for them. And it's through research and data and other schools that's been a successful program, so we're excited to get that going here, and hopefully that'll help us and be another restorative practice as well. So fights continue to curb that. I think having our safety liaison too here, we'll lean on him for a little bit of guidance in that area as well. So other than that,
So this fighting is just the same kids, because it's like 15 and 14, and I guess I'm just.
In one incident.
We're going from 42 to
one
29,
incident.
but the numbers don't add to 29, I don't think. It's just, I don't know.
So what we're seeing is maybe a student might have gotten in like a fight and then suspended for something else, something like that. And for the fights, I know there's a question on this. Our overall suspension days have been up a little bit because if a student gets into a physical altercation, we're going to slow the process down a little bit. We're going to make sure we put them through a threat protocol where while they're on suspension, they come into the office and we put them through a series of questions with our social workers just to make sure that they're in the right frame of mind, that we don't need to do anything else for them to be successful when they come back for suspension. So we're not just suspending the student and then they come back and we didn't intervene and then all of a sudden they're back in school without any supports. And so that's what the threat assessment protocols are for, and then also the intake for any student that is suspended. Neil and Dave meet with the parent and the student, and they put them through a whole bunch of questions. You want to talk about that a little bit, Neil?
Yeah, one of the questions was asked about what is the intake form, and essentially how is it helping? Basically what we do is Dave was talking about, is that we go through the whole process of what the student was doing when they got suspended, what they can do in the future not to get suspended again, areas where if they need a resource, who to come to, counselor, social workers, the office, and then we also have to talk about if this happens again, then what? And that's kind of important, especially as students are getting closer to the age of 18. They need to know they're adults moving forward. You just can't do certain things. Obviously, we're trying to teach them what you can and cannot do as you move into society. So we find that doing that, even if is as slow a process as it is, it's important to make sure that the student knows and the parents know, we're here to help, but we need you to make sure that you act appropriately when you're here at RB. So that's kind of the whole purpose of the intake form.
So are these all out-of-school suspensions, or are they combination of both?
So out-of-school suspensions, we do an intake form. So we call it re-entry form.
But these numbers, so are they, if you had
This is
three-
all out-of-school
oh,
suspension.
Yeah, they're all, okay.
Out-of-school suspension, yep.
Okay.
So you had 42 occurrences where there was an out-of-school suspension issued for a total of 29 students. So obviously, some of those kids are repeat offenders.
Yeah,
Correct.
Now,
Yeah, in terms of the fighting, we did have a student who did get in 2 fights first semester. So that's why that number was off on that part. And there are, yes, repeat offenders that do get suspended, unfortunately.
So some of these suspensions could be multiple days, though? Like, let's say if a kid is suspended for the 3rd time.
Only counts as one offense.
Yeah, but it could be like
Yes,
the duration of
correct.
suspension could
Yep.
be.
Could be longer. So if they do it a second time, we call it like totality of circumstances where it increases.
Okay.
So overall, we haven't seen a big shift in overall behavior from last year. Those categories are pretty similar from what we saw this year. Again, we'll try to really get ahead of the fights and the altercations and things like that.
Just to add one thing we did at this semester with grade level assemblies is, since we did say a lot of the issues occurred over the weekend and we don't find out about it, we did promote to the students that, we do have that online bully report. You can use that as another, in which students have said, hey, there was an issue between so-and-so, that way we can grab them. First thing in the morning, we kind of scoop them up. So students do use
you
that.
can address it first thing.
Yeah.
I use it every year. I say grab every year.
You can address it first.
I do. Address it first thing in the morning.
We know what you mean.
Yeah.
Just giving you a hard time.
And then just to address a couple other questions that came up. Last year, what we saw, we do grade level assemblies where we bring the entire class down and we present the handbook to them. And second semester is more of just going over hot topics. What did we see from first semester? How can we address it? And for our senior class, typically they've seen it several times, and it's sometimes playing a broken record. And so we saw that for them. And we shifted our presentation a little bit. We had our English classes come down. And so we met with them in the little theater. It's a smaller venue, and it was only about 25, 30 students at a clip, where we're just going over, just having discussion more than just talking over topics, having an elongated discussion. Like, what are we expecting when we close your near graduation? What's going on with prom coming up? What's my expectation and the dean's expectations for your behavior as leaders and as seniors, as you are completing your graduation date? Things like that. And they come up with some great questions for us and for us to think about too, and how we can review things in the handbook or just policies that we have second semester. So those have been really, I think, meaningful for our deans and just good information. So we'll continue to do that.
And we found that students were more likely to ask questions in a smaller venue. Like when we had the big groups, there are 2 kids who may raise their hand when there's, many kids out there have, great questions. Then we did these smaller groups, there's hands up all the time. So then we can go in a more of a smaller venue and really answer their specific question they have.
We talked about the suspension intake form. We'll do that for every suspension. And that's just to make sure that we're doing all that we can to intervene. And if there's an additional suspension for the same student with another offense, we can go through that previous paperwork and see, okay, this is what we put down on paper. Did we adhere to it? Did you adhere to it? What can we do going forward? And that's part of the SB 100 information as well. And then lastly, another new initiative that has helped increase security is the surveillance cameras on Rockefeller, and we've already utilized those over break a little bit with an accident out there. But also that's just for, we have a big TV down in our welcome center that our security will look at throughout the day. And not only there, but we also increased a couple of cameras throughout the building. So now we have the opportunity to walk a student all the way through our building. So they have eyes up, so they have all those cameras up so they can see what's going on at any time and then report out if they need assistance or if they have a student that's in an area they shouldn't be or things like that. So that's also shored up our security protocols. So, any other questions on attendance or behavior? All right.
Good job, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Chief Financial Officer report.
Marianne, if you could please start on board book, page 17. Okay, first thing we'd like to highlight is the financial reports for the month ending December 31st, 2017. This is 6 months of the current budget, 50% of the fiscal year. If you look at the monthly report, the revenues, not very much on the revenue side with it. The state is making their general state aid payments. On the expenditure side, the big thing in the month of December was the bond and interest payment for our current bonds that are out there. And then if you move from our monthly report to the financial statements, and if we're just strictly looking at the operating revenue and operating expenditures, the revenues are right in line with pretty much 50% of the budget out there. On the expenditure side, if we look at the operating expenditures, the only one that kind of looks off is our operations and maintenance. The reason that one's off is that we paid Airmark for the full amount of their contract to get a 2% discount on it, so that's why it looks like 71% on the overall percentage. Moving on to the revenue expense report. Once again, on that report, it just shows what the budget is versus what our actual is at this particular point in the year. Moving from our revenue expense report is the student activity summary report for the month of December. There are 4 accounts that are in the negative. They're in the process of either fundraising or having some sort of donation come in to get those balances back in line into the positive balances. And remember, in this report, anything that shows a negative is actually a positive. The ones that are positive are negative. That's just how it is in the system that we use for our student activities. Moving on to the paid building rentals report for second quarter.
Give Marianne a chance to get to that. So as you're going to each of these, you've got to let Marianne catch up on your overhead. So what page is that on?
Should be on 56.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, this is basically a summary of our personnel charges that we had for our paid invoices during second quarter, and then it also shows the space that was rented during that quarter, and showing what our profit was for the quarter. Following page 56 is the pie chart, just showing it as a graph as to what the percentages were for overall for expenditures, or for overall for the revenue that was brought in. Also showing on the bottom is our year-to-date net profit for rentals. Following the rentals report is our Airmark quarterly business review. Airmark is our cleaning service and maintenance service that's out there. Some of the things that are highlighted in this report, it does a nice summary of who their staff is. Just for those that are curious as to how many custodians we have and how many maintenance staff members we have. It also shows the work being done throughout the building. So if anyone wants to read it, it's on there showing here are the projects that are being done, here's what's happening, here's where they're going to focus on moving forward. It also has inspection data in there, which is very important. The inspections are done by the daytime manager and also the nighttime manager going through, and basically these inspections drive then their trainings to make sure that they're meeting the necessary requirements that our district sets for them with cleanliness and addressing every issue that we need them to address. And then in there also is a report from West 40 on a life safety inspection with what came up on our report and how we addressed those different issues from West 40.
Now, that's just our annual West 40 life safety inspection. That's not our 10-year. That's not what we bond money for. This is just once a year, a West 40 representative comes, walks the building with Joel and Scott, and identifies anything that needs to be addressed. The majority of the time, these are internal fixes that, as you can see, Joel's responses are simple things of moving extension cords, moving debris out of certain closets or areas. And
my favorite one is the fact they couldn't find a switch, so all we had to do was take a photo and send a photo of the switch they somehow
Correct.
couldn't find on the inspection, right?
Right.
So it's a very good report just to kind of see what they do overall within the building. If you get a chance, please review it. There are some text boxes in there to try to clarify some of the inspections and how it drives the different training sessions then that Airmark will have for their employees. Moving on to page 70 is the 2018 financial profiler for the school district. This basically is a report that is generated through our audit that we have given to the state to see how financially responsible the district is. On this one, there are 5 categories that you're rated on. As you can see, we're doing very well on it. Our overall score was 3.7 out of 4.0, which puts us in financial recognition category, which is the highest on that. This is done annually. We'll continue to keep monitoring this to make sure that we try to stay in that particular category. And then you did see this previous, it was in the audit from earlier, but I wanted to go back through it as the state finally posted it.
What page was that on?
70.
Page 70.
Well, I mean, it's good to be in the top financial recognition, but our first duty is to stay within our policies, right?
Yes.
So if, for instance, the first one is fund balance to revenue ratios, if we have to spend, a little bit deficit spending over a couple of years, like the projections are going to show, it's possible
that we would
could
drop
down, but we're still going to be in
under
good financial
board policy. We still would be in the clear with.
I mean,
the
all other
percentage.
things being equal, I guess it's best to be the highest, but sometimes in managing your school district properly, you're not going to hit the highest numbers, right?
Yes, I agree with that.
What do you have next, Scott? The contract tool?
The contract tool, there were 3 contracts that were up. The yearbook was approved at the last meeting, which leaves 2 contracts that are out there. The medical insurance, I have contacted all the districts within the treasurer's office all the districts that feed into it. There were 4 that use independent brokers, and out of the 4, 3 of them used the same one, so I contacted the broker that was using that, and then also the other broker that a school district uses. The problem with this is they are independent and they're self-insured on it, not part of a co-op. I did contact our co-op, and they offer another cooperative within Arthur Gallagher. The issue with that one is the plan design, you have to pick from a set of plan designs. And it may or may not fit with what's in the collective bargaining to match exactly what we have with current deductibles. So I didn't have EBC, I mean not EBC, but Arthur Gallagher give me the contact number for that.
Well, you said it may or may not. Without talking to them, you won't know if it's the may or the may not.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta look into that, okay?
And the second thing is, doesn't our collective bargaining agreement give us some flexibility in changing
You
who
can
our
ch-
insurer is?
Yes, but not the plans.
Okay.
The negotiated deductibles, that kind of stuff.
So I mean,
has to be negotiated. So if we could say, show our prescriptions and our benefits.
So basically, it's I'm taking what our current stuff is and comparing apples to apples.
But I mean, these brokers will do it for you, so if there's one that's a may, and we're not sure, again, I think we should, just to go through the whole due diligence, is to say, here's what we're required
You need to
have,
find
have
out
it
if,
covered.
I think what he's asking is because you mentioned that you need to show them our plan and see if they have any plans that fit.
Yeah.
What you stated makes it seem as if you didn't check that.
No, I understand.
Okay.
So
And then you call, what was the third thing you did?
I also contacted all the high school districts to see where their actual premiums were. As far as what was your HMO cost for a single versus what we currently have. Overall, depending on how you look at it, we're slightly lower than a lot of the districts. The issue that I have with this is I don't know their plan design.
Right.
So that's the big piece to it.
We just want to make sure as EBC has 100 and something schools.
110 districts in it.
Okay, so before we bring to the board the recommendation that we want to stay with EBC, you've done a lot of good things to do our due diligence. Just find out about the last thing with the plan design. And I think we could say we've done our due diligence, that we're in a good cooperative. So we only need to do one other step.
Okay, I will contact them and check on plan design through the other cooperative.
Scott,
The other.
were the other schools willing to give you that information?
From our township treasurer, I got 14 out of the 16.
Oh, wow.
For the high schools that I sent to, it's like a group, the Southwest group that I'm kind of go through these meetings. I got 8 high schools to give me their stuff. So I got a pretty good response overall with it.
Yeah, that's
And by the way,
wonderful.
we could just do a FOIA request on all of them, and they'd have to provide it to you anyway, so there's no reason not to do it, because your other alternative is send them a FOIA request, every one of them, and say, I want to know your rate, I want to know what's covered, and they have to give it to you, right?
That's true.
Okay.
Phone. Get some good stuff with the phone.
The phone is, yes, there's a lot of good things that we've done with the phone. We did bring in a consultant to look at all the different lines that we have out there. We have done some cutting of lines currently, and we've already seen the savings in our last bill, and there will be more savings moving forward until our contract ends on it. The RFP has been written and will be going out tomorrow to 7 different firms or vendors that are out there with the phone. It's based on what our actual needs are with it. The process going through this, we're addressing E911 to make sure that we're in compliance, making sure that we have the correct number of plain old telephone lines. We're also exploring what type of backup we can have if something goes down. If our main line goes down, what is our backup with it? So that's in the RFP. Basically, I want to make sure that we address this, that we're not down ever.
So you
with our
did
current
it,
stuff.
so when this came up last time with the board, you've done some good work. You go back to your consultant. You paid an outside vendor not related to our phone system, is that correct?
Yes.
You paid him a small amount of money?
Yes.
And in return, we're seeing he was able to find how many lines roughly, or how much savings are we gonna experience?
we were being billed for, I want to say 23 POTS lines, and we were only using 7 of them.
So by cutting 16 lines, that saves a significant portion of our
Yes,
revenue.
and then also we have we took out from the auto shop a line that was roughly $800 a month that was not necessary after being able to convert to a different device, which
So the
new
consultant pays
devices.
for himself and the district saving money.
Yes.
That sounds good.
You made good progress since the last time you reported.
So
It's good stuff.
yes, it is, and we're like I said, we're gonna see how everything comes in with the RFP process and see where they're at.
So probably the one last question that anybody watching on TV would ask you is, we still seem to have phone problems. Is that anything that's in our control, or is that AT&T and the outside service that's being provided?
It's AT&T and the copper wires that we have currently.
And what are we doing to address that, or what is AT&T doing to address that?
Currently, right now, AT&T really doesn't want to service the copper wires. They will service it if we're going down, but in the meantime, we're looking to see what we can get over fiber.
Is this
which
the
is a
same
more-
AT&T that refuses to pay on our cell tower because we had them down for a little bit?
No, AT&T was where we were overpaying us on the cell tower.
But who's not paying us right now?
I think everybody's paying.
Everybody's paying.
We had a while where
There was an overpayment by AT&T.
The one that didn't pay us is the one who was on the smokestack.
Right.
What do we move? I forget which was that Sprint.
SBC, but I don't even think they're in business anymore.
That's AT&T.
Yeah.
SBC is AT&T.
They're paying us. We're paying them back. They
Yeah.
overpaid it.
Well, maybe we should
So when
pay
you
them
say-
back with the fact that they.
When you say there's copper wires, I'm sure that's a different division, their cellular division. Well, I don't want to get into that, but the copper wires, that's our infrastructure that's causing this problem? Or it's their infrastructure in the box?
It's their infrastructure coming in from their line coming into
So
our
if they don't
school.
want to service it, maybe we should make a demand then that they replace it. Can we talk to them about that?
Okay.
Because if they have an issue with the copper wires and it's their infrastructure, why are they telling us it's our problem?
Okay, I will look into it. And,
Unless we're missing something, just check into that if you can make a note.
okay.
So this potentially could be a safety issue that AT&T doesn't want to address.
It could potentially, yes, because then we would be out of a actual line.
So like when we got back from break, the phones were down.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with our voice over IP system that we have in the
It's
building and that
nothing
this RFP
internally.
is for.
It's nothing internally. It was from the outside.
Let's file a complaint with the Illinois Commerce Commission.
So,
I know how to draft them if you need help. I mean, seriously, they have a duty to provide the service to us. If they're not doing it, we should tell them that. We're just gonna file a complaint with the Illinois Commerce Commission.
I would say we've had at least 5 occurrences this year where our phones have been down, correct?
yes.
So why don't we look into the copper thing, see if we can get to an executive. If not, then maybe we need to draft a letter from our legal office.
Okay.
Okay?
Can you explain one more thing in the RFP, which all this sounds good, but is it comprehensive? Is it gonna address our internet and our cell phone costs too? Can we do, I mean, there's providers that provide all of that, right?
Yes, there is.
Are we looking at all of them at the same time to see if we can get a bigger bang for our buck?
The internet, we're probably looking at going through the same provider that we have currently and upping the bandwidth. We will have to do that with the additional one-to-one initiative with the last class coming on, so we will have to go from 500 to a gig.
But why do we have to do that with the current person?
We use 2 people, correct, Scott? We use Comcast and then we have a backup with
Yes.
AT&T. So if one goes down, the other's here to support the
Mhm.
bill.
So there's some issues with, which will be addressed as we go through the budgeting cycle. We may have to upgrade the backup also to be able to function if you want to use the one-to-one devices that are out there. That's something that we're looking at. We are looking at, okay, can we kind of bridge, say, 100 gigs to the phone and then 400 to the bandwidth for our computer. So that's something that's part of this also. It's a much more involved process than I thought with just saying, here's the phone, because it does affect, if you come in over fiber, kind of bridging the amount of bandwidth that you have.
So that's all the more reason to make sure you're looking at it comprehensively, right?
And we've
Is that just an omission that you don't have it on this list here?
well, normally that's through the tech department on that.
So I think
So,
an
but
easier
it's
answer, it's not part of
on
the
this.
RFP, right?
It's not part of the RFP, but it's
Okay.
being looked at.
As you get, as that expenditure becomes a bigger expense, I would suggest you take, the CFO takes role on a part of that negotiation.
Mhm.
And then look, as Mr. Walsh said, all-inclusive with the cell phone, your phone service, and the internet provider down the road to look and see if there can be a comprehensive package of all three put together somehow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I know Comcast provides phone service.
Question, Scott, what did the consultant suggest in this? I mean, he had to give us some kind of idea, right? How to combine those two.
His suggestion right now is to basically get our quotes on, get the proposals in here, running what we currently have, and then make the determination, because there is alternates in the RFP. So there's your base one, and then I have alternates with the fiber, voice over IP, with everything in it, and we still need to see where everything comes in. I don't want to stay on the copper wires if I'm going to be down five days, during the thing, because that's unacceptable for a school.
The RFP hasn't gone out yet?
No, not yet.
Going out tomorrow?
Yes.
But if you wanted to slow it down a day or two and see if there's an alternate for any cellular packages or offerings, you could at least put that in there. Just a general.
Potentially.
Right? If not, then it's something we look at. Right now, we do a district cell phone provider. This is Verizon.
Yes.
So the only one I'm familiar with that does a business package for the cellular is Comcast. I'm not sure about AT&T with the broadband or with their fiber. So we can look into that, right?
Yes.
It's nothing we'd have to answer tonight.
No.
Okay.
This is good, though. Thanks for.
Thank you, yes.
So, it's really involved. We'll get there. And then the last thing I would like to update you on is the township treasurer. We'll be working one more year with the current software package, which is DCR. They're in the works of negotiating a contract to move to Infinite Visions with a go-live date of 7/1/19. So DCR would be kind of phased out after a year. With it, it was going to their board meeting tonight at the township treasurers to see if it would pass and what the whole process would be with training, implementation, and then obviously we would need to know what the cost is to the districts.
So we will see an increased cost.
There will be an increase in cost.
We had some of the districts that are part of the LADC, that are part of the Alliance Township Treasurer's Office, they went to Infinite Visions. There was an increase in cost. The business managers are happy with it. I did talk with the superintendent. Online reporting, a lot easier to do spreadsheets, query data. Financial reports are a lot easier than the old version of DCR, but I think our treasurer is retiring. That's probably why we went one other year of DCR. Is that right, or is that just
Maybe they
for an
wanna
implementation phase?
Get to like the 30th anniversary of this antiquated system or something.
Yeah.
It's actually a very intense training that they set for the districts. I know at my previous district, I was going through the conversion, and it was actually a year-long process to convert with it. And staff members who are involved in this could be out of the building for multiple days.
One thing I would say with any data system changeover is please make note or have them both running dually.
They will be
So
for
every-
roughly 6 months.
And even if the ladies need to print extra reports and file them, just because sometimes those systems don't sync and we don't want to have numbers with money being off.
No, I understand.
So this way we'll have printouts from DCR saying, wait, our June for DCR was this, Infinite Visions is showing this, as we move forward.
So can you explain something to them? Why are they voting on the contract today and then sharing the cost information with the districts after they vote?
The way that it worked is districts would be able to get different packages. So they're bidding it out and getting cost on your 3 main packages. There's other packages that are out there that could be tailored to specific districts, and if you would want that, the cost would be additional.
But I mean, the biggest cost is gonna be buying and converting to the new system, right?
Yes.
So what if it's $10 million?
It's not $10 million.
What if it's $1 million?
So
Then we're stuck with paying what our share is, which would be like $100,000 or $150,000, and we have nothing to say about it. Plus, you can't have any degree of confidence that this treasurer's office can actually convert to a new system, can you? In a year or whatever it takes.
I guess it's Mr. Walsh is saying is we're blind to their whole
They gave you a process.
contract, going out there and bidding the contract and seeing how reasonable that price is compared to what other districts have,
They
have
took you on
expended on
site
it.
visits and they took you.
we did multiple
seeing
site
different-
visits.
Right, but from a standpoint of what they're actually gonna contract for versus did they go out and compare it? You said the LATSI group had just converted over. What was their cost to implement? What was their cost versus what this treasurer's gonna
Like Tim's saying,
contract it
it will
to?
be,
It'll
I would
be-
imagine 50 to 100.
And Infinite Visions, that's what all the other treasurers are converting to.
Understood.
So-
It sounds like it's a much better package. It's gonna give you a lot more flexibility in reporting.
There can't
It's
be
just
a
that
worse
we're, it's just that, they're embarking on an expenditure on behalf of our district, what else, we're being blind to seeing the cost.
No, I-
Or what process they are to make sure that they are negotiating the best possible price.
I'm sure they had to go through a bid process.
They
so
did.
you just asked to see a copy of the bid.
But I gotta
The
tell you,
RFP.
LADSI, we usually, you're on the board of LADSI.
Correct.
Usually, we might disagree with something around the corners, but they seem to know what they're doing. I gotta tell you right now, I have no degree of confidence that that treasurer's office can convert into a new system regardless of how much we pay for it. I mean, every time we've asked them to do, they claimed they could give us different reports. Remember, they came here and claimed, and when you asked them, that was probably right before
Before he
Scott
got
was
here.
here.
Before Scott got here.
For months, they said they'd do it. They didn't give us one different report. Then they said they couldn't do it. So, you're taking people who are barely can do it, this old 30-year-old system that's just absolute piece of garbage, and telling me we're gonna pay some significant amount of money for them to convert it, and, there's no confidence that they can convert it. I mean, do they have people who have those kind of skills to convert a accounting system at the treasurer's office?
Yes.
They do?
I'm assuming, Scott, before you answer, I think they're gonna be bringing in consultants.
Yeah.
Which that means it'll
It's-
cost more.
Right, and as much as we voiced our opinion and wanted to be a part of the process, at the end of the day, the treasurer's gonna make the final decision. We're one of 14 or one of 16 votes.
Well, you-
But that's why I asked.
You
Scott.
heard, you see this board's concern
No,
about
absolutely.
what we think about the treasurer's office. So as this rolls out, there's gonna be a lot of burden on your shoulders to make sure that this thing gets implemented correctly.
No, I,
So be aware of that.
no, I understand.
And we did some talking with other business managers to make sure we were all on the same page, right? When you went to somebody's site visits and we're looking at different programs, so that at least, because the original recommendation was that they think DCR can still do the job going forward. Was that not? They wanted to keep DCR.
It was it's a very viable option. That's what I
So we
was
got
told.
them to at least realize they needed to go to a web-based program that, so there was some talking with other business managers and trying to get this to move forward. You're right, Tim, level of confidence is low, but
So I guess we're also asking you to be
just be hands-on.
hands-on into their whole setup of their conversion process, understanding what they're committing themselves to be involved with, what their people are gonna work on, and to make sure that that you think their implementation process is a sound one. Because it's gonna come back to you when we're sitting at a board meeting here and saying, and you're gonna tell us we can't get numbers because treasurer screwed up, and we're gonna go back to you and say, well, how hands-on were you with the treasurer's office?
Nope, I understand.
Okay.
Scott, are there any business managers that are kind of sitting in your chair that you can work with, that you can form kind of almost like a mini team or something, that, so you're not doing this completely all on your own self?
I mean, it's the entire treasurer's office will be doing the conversion together.
Right.
So we'll all be at the trainings together. The way that I'm viewing this would be is that it probably would be split up between the high school districts and the elementaries, because obviously you got different needs that you're going to have with it. But there will be people going through the exact same training. There's other schools that have converted that I can call and get answers for. Like you said, with the LaGrange Area 1 converting, they're just a phone call away.
All the township treasurers that are in Cook County, which is the only county that has township treasurers
Are
left,
with Infinite Visions.
are all doing Infinite Visions. So your group that you work with out of Southwest, you should be able to use them as a reference, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have some references that you can use besides our township office to
Yes.
help you and our staff.
There's plenty of people out there that have it, and
are you putting something in the budget then? Well, I guess it's the next.
It would be-
Would be FY '20.
Well, you gotta, if they're gonna convert it as of 1/7/1 of 19, you gotta be doing some of the work to prepare for that.
it will be training with it, and we'll have to see what the costs are that they want for year one with it.
Yeah, I would also sit back and assess what kind of additional burden it's gonna put on your personnel
Yeah.
also. And then, to consider that, because you're gonna have additional, if your staff is gonna have to double work or, double print and what have you. Come up with what you anticipate how much of a burden that is on your staff.
No, I understand, and my biggest concern is just being away from their day-to-day stuff, having to
Understood.
go through the training.
Understood.
You wanna take a drink of water before you get into your projections? Are you all right?
We're all right.
Okay.
All right, off to the financial projections. All right, if we can start on board book page 73 and go through the assumptions.
And Scott, why don't you make a mention of who Forecast 5 is, because there's new board members on here as opposed to the people who've gone through with these projections have been,
Okay.
and what the company was and what have you, so why don't you give us a little background?
All right, Forecast 5 is a split off from PMA Financial. What we do with them is work with them each year to try to see where financially we will be, trying to go out 3 to 5 years with it. Our projections are 5 years. The district gives the assumptions, and we use their program to come up with these projections on it, and we can manipulate whatever we can within the assumption range to try to make these as accurate as possible. So if we start with the revenue projections, the tax collection has been increased to 99% from 98.5%. Each 1% is approximately a $195,000 increase to the district. The consumer price index, the CPI factor, is at 2% for all of the years. The general state aid calculation reflects the new evidence-based formula that the state just came out with. There would be an increase in FY20, and then it would be held at that $50,000 increase, and that is, of course, if the state does pay and keeps funding the formula as it's supposed to be. If we look at new construction that's out there, roughly a new construction of $200,000 would generate about $5,300 for the district of additional operating revenue.
So instead of just reading these, do you have key ones you want us to focus on? Or do you want to just, instead of going through each one?
I'll just summarize them real
So
quick.
if we're going up 0.5% on property calculation, that's $100,000. 0.5% on CPI, that's $100,000.
Mhm.
50,000 on general state aid, so that's $250,000, and $5,300 on the 200,000 in EAV.
Yes.
So we're roughly 250,000. We're projecting increase in revenue.
Mhm. And then on the expenditure side, we have salaries increasing at 3%. That's admin, our teaching staff, and our non-certified staff. We have built in retirement savings, and also we have per the contract, the post-retirement benefits are reflected as we move forward through the projections. The retirement savings will offset some of the salary increases. Our medical, we are going to be increasing at 6.5% based on our historical trend. And also I had a conversation with our current provider, and their underwriter suggested 6.5% moving through the entire projection. And our hiring projections are based off of the enrollment projections that you saw at an earlier board meeting, increasing 1 FTE in 20 and 21, and then decreasing that same FTE in 2023 based on the projection.
22, 23.
So on average, we're gonna be flat. in our
Basically,
staff.
no change. Okay, if we can go to the next page for the revenue analysis. And how this is gonna work, I'm just gonna kinda go through local, state, and federal. If you notice, our local, as we said, would go up through, go up based off of CPI. The reason that you see an increase in FY19 of 4.27%, you might be saying, why isn't it 2? This is based off of our AFR figures, and the AFR figures captures the additional 60 days after after June 30th. So it's the accrual amount. This would be what was in our audit. So per this, I under budgeted the current budget, not reflecting the AFR figures, and they use the AFR figures. There is a 2% goes across until you hit FY23, and on this one, there will be a timing issue with Cook County. We will be having some of our debt service payment coming off, so we still will be collecting the 55% of it, which would then go into our operating funds. And then the following year, it would make up for the deduction in the debt service payment. Our local revenue, the increase in next year's is our one-to-one initiative. We'll collect more for the Chromebooks, and then it will stay the same with no change as you go through the projection. The state revenue, you will see the change in general state aid. It adds in the new categories. If you look at the footnote on the bottom, it shows what the new categories are in it. It really is no change other than in years FY20 through 23, it reflects the additional 50,000 if the state gives us based off of the projection that we're supposed to get.
So it really isn't going up 34%, because in the one below it goes down by 40%.
Yes,
And
it's
that's just
just
because they
taking out
lumped
those other
everything into one account.
So we should just look at the total state revenue line.
Yeah.
Yes, the
Yeah.
total gives like the correct projection.
All right.
Fed?
For our federal, there is a decrease going next year. The decrease is our special ed grant funds from IDEA. And basically, it's not that we're losing it. That money was applied to our purchase service agreement
With
for
who?
LADSI. So we're not losing it. It just went towards bringing our actual purchase service down, applying the money.
Can you, I don't know, thought I understood this. I mean, if it's revenue, it's revenue. Why is it not revenue here because we're using it for LADSI? Is the money going directly to LADSI?
It flows through LADSI, and then they take whatever
Okay.
the allocation would be.
So it
and we
goes to
apply it-
LADSI first.
And then we
Yes.
apply it to
I
our
got
purchase
it. So
service
it's not
agreement.
revenue, doesn't go to our county treasurer for us?
No, it flows through
That's part
LADSI.
of us being part of that cooperative. It goes to them, they apply it to our
Got it.
bills.
Thank you.
And as we move through this, if we look at the chart on the bottom, you can see that the district is very reliant on the property taxes. That's the biggest source of revenue on that at 79%. As we move to the next page to go over the expenditure analysis, in the salary line, we said in the assumptions that our salaries are going up 3%. You'll notice that the percent changes there are not 3%. The reason for that is it's taking into account the retirement savings that we will be seeing as our staff starts to retire here. We do have some big savings in as you can see, starting in FY '21, '22, and '23. And also factored into that change is some FTE that will go up and go down. So that's the variance that you see with the average. Benefits are also the same thing. As you move up and down with the staff, things change with it, so it won't give you the clear 6.5%, but it is pretty close. The next section that I'd like to look at is the purchase service. We did increase the Airmark purchase service by 2%, which is the CPI factor, and transportation by 5%. All other purchase service agreements were held at the current level that they're currently at. So that's why it doesn't show going up by 2%, which is the CPI. The non-capital equipment, there is an increase going next year. That is for the increase cost of our Chromebooks. Last year of implementation for full or full amount of all the grades having the one-to-one initiative.
And that's offset on the revenue side, though, you showed us, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing would be under the other objects. As you go out, we do have some students who are outplaced will be coming off the books, so there will be a decrease in outplaced tuition. And at the bottom of the page, it shows the pie chart. And as you can see, salary and benefits, 72% of all expenditures. Very significant because it's really hard to make a change unless you really mess with the staffing or the salaries and benefits.
So if I look at the total here, you predict 2% inflation on each year over the 5-year period, right, Scott?
Mm-hmm.
But the first 2 years were a little over the 2%, and then the last 3 years, we project that our expenditures will be less than inflation.
And with that, we currently took the original projection was at 3.5% per what our current contract is, and then when the new contract comes, it dropped to 3% for the staff, and also with those retirement savings,
right,
is where you'll see the percentage go down.
No, I'm saying that's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
If we're comfortable with this projection, we're projecting over the 5-year period that our expenditures aren't even going to increase as much as inflation.
Yes.
Okay.
The last 3 years.
Yeah, but if you took 2% a year, it would be more than on average. It's less than 2%.
And then if we look at the projected summary, we really want to look at FY19 through FY23, and we want to look at the line that says surplus deficit, including other financial sources, which captures the best picture as far as the projection. It does show deficit spending on that throughout the entire projection. However, it's still within the board policy for fund balance to as a percent of an expenditure as expenditures with it.
So in next year, you're projecting around 103,000.
Yes.
Then in 20 to 22, that's where we get closer to 4 or 500,000.
Yes, and then it drops back down.
Drops down to 21 by year 23.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, if we look at the balance as the percent of expenditures, we never go, our policy requires us to stay below, above 33%.
33%, that is
so that we
correct.
have, and that's also how we're evaluated to a certain extent, we talked about before by
With the
state.
profile.
But we, even though we're predicting deficit spending, we're predicting to stay well within the limit of our policy and what our reserve has to be, right?
Yes.
And actually, under the new state formula, you actually get more revenue if you have less of a reserve now, don't you?
You do.
So you're actually kind of penalized for having reserves versus staying close to the
2-year
policy
policy.
probably gets you more revenues from the state, assuming they keep the formula similar over a 5-year, right?
If the board, if I could step in, Scott, that's a good job, by the way.
Yeah.
You knew all the information, and
He's got one more page though, too.
I'd like to go through that last page.
Okay.
So, Mary, if you could go to the last chart, and it may be easier to go back and forth, but the blue line is 33% of our expenses. The red line is the fiscal year end balances. So if you see how this chart, obviously with the deficit spending, it would take fund balances down, but at the end of 5 years, we would still have more than the 33% that's required by board policy. The other thing I'd like to bring to the board's attention that if we can manage these deficits to stay at or below what we're projecting with these deficits, in 2023, our debt service starts to come off the books for the taxpayers. So if you kind of look at the concept we're laying out here, is if we minimize our deficit spending but still spend down some fund balance without cutting programs or cutting services to kids or the community, we should be able to control it to a point to where by 2023, when the bonds begin to come off of the taxpayers, we then can look at within 5 years or 6 years from now, the possibility of doing a small ed rate increase without actually increasing the taxes to the taxpayers, because they'll be getting, their property tax bill will decrease by the bonds coming off, and if we can figure out what we need in order to improve our fund balance or our operating cost, and still provide a savings to the taxpayer, that would be, I think, something that might be amendable to the community. If you think about it, we're projecting going out from 2023. So prior to my arrival in 2011, a referendum was ran and was defeated, and we've made operational changes. We've changed some of the way we staff. We've changed activities, pay to participate. We've did some things with our debt and restructuring our debt, refinancing. So we were able, if this can all hold to fruition, we'll be able to go 12 years, most of those years with balanced budgets or low deficits, and without having to increase the taxes for an ed rate increase. So we went from in 2011 to saying we needed a referendum, and we were able to go 12 years.
Yeah, we were in deficit spending when you came on.
Right. So if we can stick to these projections and work with our union and control our salary increase, benefit increases, and continue to offer the retirement incentives, et cetera, and control our cost, I think we can do this. This lays out a 5-year plan for the board to where we would stay within our policy, as well as provide us enough time for some of that other debt that's on the taxpayers' backs to come off, and then revisit this 5 years from now. So that's the 30,000-foot view.
So my question is, this Vivecast is dramatically different than last year's Vivecast. Like millions of dollars difference.
Why?
Why should we trust this one or not trust that one, or not trust this one and trust that one?
So we went through,
we just changed the assumptions, 500 revenue, 500
Well, we went through, I think we
expenditures,
had
and we got
a-
$1 million difference.
I think some past interactions with, Tim's asked this question before, and it's not fair for Scott to answer this. I can answer this with my experience or history here. And it's same with the budget, and you've asked this question with the budget. The previous board has always been budget and assume more on expenditures, less on revenues, to always see worst case scenario. Well, when you run those projections of worst case scenario with the detail that a forecast 5 puts in there with all the algorithms and everything, it produces 5-year projections that show $1 million deficit annually, and we're out of fund balance by the end of the 5 years.
Right.
And so this year with
That
Tim
makes us nervous.
with Tim and Gary, and I mean, we went into this when we met with Scott, when we met with the consultant, we said, we have to clean up our assumptions because the previous projections we've shown have never come to fruition. If anything, they've been the opposite. We showed them expected $500,000 deficit, and we'll have a $500,000 surplus, right? So that's $1 million swing. So that's why we went and we raised property taxes as close to 100,000. We went specifically what was on our teacher, our projections. Now, this could change in the event that all of a sudden we get an attendance spike, right? We had to add a teacher instead of cut a teacher in 22. But we tried to keep this as real.
We have to negotiate a collective bargaining agreement.
Correct. We have to negotiate a collective bargaining agreement that would fall in that 3% range. Otherwise, we would have to expect to cut staff. I mean, those are all things that we're assuming that, but looking at our historical trend, we and Scott pulled the last 2 contracts, and if it came close to 3%, it's fair and it's consistent with the 2 previous contracts. And
I think there's 2 big issues there. Number one, the increase in the percent for revenue. The second one is we didn't have any vision of retirements, and retirements are playing a big key to this assumption. And we've already got a couple committed to retiring, and we know those dates. But when we ran the assumption before, when you saw the salary increases, they were 3% across, always 3%, 3%, 3%, without any impact to retirement. And, additional staffing that was requested in those projections. So that's I think if you look at that, you go look at the increase in salaries in the historical projections, you'll see they were typically at 3% coming in each. And that's a big, calculate that on, you'll see that probably those 2 big issues, that percent increase in revenue and the fact that we are having some vision now on the group of people retiring.
And I also
We were able to
think
refinance our bonds, that helped us.
that has anything in there. It's not in this projection.
It's not in the projection. We don't. This is strictly the education side, not the.
And we pushed them pretty hard. Like the question I asked, if you're projecting 2% inflation, why are expenses not going up at least 2%? And Scott went through a lot of digging and effort to be able to explain why he's comfortable that those numbers are accurate. Or, why if you're doing 3% salary, and then you look, and Gary pretty much explained it, but you look and then in the 5th year, we're like, our salaries are going down. It's because we know that several teachers that are at a very high rate are going to be replaced by teachers that'll start somewhere near the starting rate. So, we did go through a period when some of us first came on the board, we had, maybe 6, 8 retirements, something like that. But then we went through a period where almost having no retirements. And, if you have big groups of retirement, it does help the budget.
Sure. I feel like it tends to be cyclical too in education. Because it's similar. If you look at the attendance numbers, right, they mirror each other. So.
Good. I just wanted to ask the question.
It's a real good question.
I mean, because they're just different, and I like accurate budgets.
Yeah,
we talked about that. And,
Yeah.
if this one's more accurate, it's still not great, but it's better.
at least, and it also lays out a plan for something for us to follow.
Well, the other one did the same thing, but this one's a better plan, right?
The other one laid out a plan, but it was saying 97% taxes.
Assuming we get 2% growth. And
correct.
Assuming,
That's why they're called assumptions.
That's why they're called assumptions.
Right. So, there's not much else to report. Scott's now, the next project I'm having him move forward on in February is preparing a tentative budget so that in March, the board can see how close this aligns between.
Well, we already know what the budget is for next year.
That's his goal, is that it's got to match the projections.
Minus 751,000.
Right. So.
But it's going to be zero.
But the board wanted to see a tentative budget before any staffing reductions. Technically, under school law, that staffing reductions need to take place usually by the end of March. And so if where this gets kind of goofy is that under the school budget calendar in Illinois, you do your budget after you do your staffing. So we wanted to have a tentative budget out there before we do staffing, just in case something does not add up based on what the projections are. But we're pretty sure that they'll be pretty close, correct?
That's what I'm hoping.
Correct?
Correct.
All right. Okay, you want to move on?
All right. This is a chance for visitors' comments. Seeing that there are no visitors in the audience, I will not read the policy. Have a chance now for any Board of Education members for additional discussion items. Looking to my left, anyone?
Nope.
Any additional discussion items?
No, thank
Am I
you.
right? No? All right. Any updates on Police Department radio?
Nope.
No, nothing. Old business, life safety items, capital improvements?
The administration, one of the things we talked about at our facilities, we'll just provide, and Scott's CFO report in the end of February. Either Scott or I will lay out the timeline with the new life safety money and what we're projecting over the next 2 or 3 years, how to address those repairs. And also, we have a summary document that we prepared for the last 3 years of projects, just to summarize for the board.
Okay, we have some press policy issue.
Press policy, the policy council met. There were a few questions submitted. As you can see, most of the stuff we're recommending either no change to what the IASB is recommending, or we have a few minor edits, nothing major. I included the edits from the council. There were a few questions submitted, and most of those are grammatical or things that I can tweak with Mary Ann, but I wanted to highlight what I figured to be the 3 bigger questions. In 6:310, which talks about our PE waivers, and Kristen, this is something we want to make sure we start acknowledging. We're not going to accept the definition of because it's too broad of a definition, but we want to make sure that the hockey club is also considered for a PE waiver, because we do recognize that as a part of our clubs that we offer at Riverside Brookfield. So we need to just make sure that, I'm going to tweak that language in the policy so it says interscholastic activities, IHSA extracurriculars, and any clubs that are recognized by the district. And so we want to make sure it specifically says by the district, so that it does not include any kind of outside clubs that are not sponsored. So a kid or parent can't come to us and say, oh, my kid plays for this volleyball club, they need a PE waiver. That does not warrant under school code what the PE waiver is for. But a club like our hockey club that is between 3 or 4 high schools, that's something we're going to offer the PE waiver similar. So when their season's over, they go back into PE classes. The other one was on 5:90. That just talked about harassment and bullying. And the question that was submitted is we just want to make sure we prepare staff. We do meet with staff and go through all the policies that have their responsibilities or things they need to be aware of. And so we will make sure that if a student does come and talk to them about being bullied or harassed or any other issues, DCFS related or anything of that nature, they know to report that immediately to the administration, and if it's a DCFS case, to be a mandated reporter. And 5:200, services outside the district. I think that's a language thing that Mary Ann and I could tweak, but the main point, based on the question that was submitted, is what the intention of the policy is so that a service that a person is being paid for during the school day, they're not moonlighting and doing that within the district. It's something that they should be doing in their hours of employment. So you wouldn't want a social worker doing outside counseling within the district if that's something they should be providing to that student as a member of the district. Same thing with a teacher. If a teacher does extra tutoring.
It's even more ambiguous than I thought. We read it different than that.
The idea of the policy is so that you're being paid to do a job here at the school, you're not setting up a private business outside of work hours to where you can make money on stuff you're supposed to do as a contracted employee for the district.
And the way I read it, it was they couldn't provide services for the district to any student who is not within the district boundaries, which they do, right? Because they might to a homeless.
Sure,
or a-
right. The intention was, hey, I'm setting up a
That
social work
needs-
business outside.
That section, that sentence needs to be removed.
So we'll tweak that, Mary Ann and I. And that was in 5:200.
Okay.
But those were mainly the big three that were submitted. The rest were just mostly, asking if we provide those trainings and services, and we do. The one thing on policy, most of the options that they offer are way too specific. I think it's more being through this now, and I know Mr. Rusk has always mentioned this in the past, keep our policies general to give our administration, the board, flexibility, and the advisory council agreed the same. On policy, the only thing we were adding, which can be confusing because we have edits, is that we're adding or designee on 6:50 about the wellness committee. So that was, the other question was why was PE waiver shifted, or PE being shifted to 3 days? It doesn't really apply to a high school. As one of the examples, the state Board of Education tried to help us with unfunded mandates in the state of Illinois by shifting PE requirements to only 3 days a week. That might work at an elementary school where then the other 2 days they do their music and art or those types of things. But at a high school, what are you going to do with your PE? You can't run your PE classes 3 days a week because then what do you do with those? So it doesn't really help our situation. So that language won't be applied. But those are the key questions that were submitted and discussed, and then that I received from other board members.
So do you want to vote on this, or should we do hold off for the tweaks?
I could put it on the consent agenda next week if there's no other questions.
Is there any that are required to implement because it changed the law in January?
The IASB sent out a ruling on the one that.
NIPA one?
Yeah, we should be okay.
They sent out a very confusing thing. It may apply and it may not.
Right. So I think we'll be fine if we approve it under the consent agenda.
Well, let's plan on doing that after
February.
All right.
I agree.
So we can move on. All right. New business? Any new business?
No new business.
Okay, matters for closed session. Personnel. Do we have any student this one? Purchase, lease of real property, probable imminent and pending litigation, collective negotiations, school safety.
The only action item I believe is personnel.
All right.
There may be some discussions on the other.
Resolved, Board of Education, Township High School District 2A, Cook County, Illinois, enters closed session for the purpose of considering appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, student discipline, purchase or lease of real properties, probable, imminent, or pending litigation, collective negotiations, and school safety.
Second.
Mary?
Yes.
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 Yes.